Hola y bienvenidos a Sex and Spanglish, where we empower mujeres to get in touch with their bodies, own their pleasure, and where we discuss all the cochinadas our abuelas didn't tell us about. I'm Ana Lopez, sexpert, future doctora, certified sex and life coach, proud Latina, and your go-to guide for all things sex. I'm here to help you kick vergüenza to the curb and teach you to have guilt-free sexual pleasure. Basically, I'm here to help you have mind-blowing sex without all the guilt and shame you learned growing up. Let's be real. La comunidad latina doesn't talk about sex, pero que suerte tienes because this Latina does. It is my vision to have Latinas worldwide discussing sex with one another just like they do with chisme. Así que, prepárate. I'm about to change the way you view sex para siempre. Welcome back to another episode of the Sex and Spanglish podcast. Today's episode is going to be another episode in the childhood series. Today we're going to be talking about feelings or emotions. I use both of those words interchangeably. So if you hear me say one or the other, I basically mean the same thing. And speaking of feelings, I am feeling a little annoyed right now and super hot. It is 1,000,000 degrees outside. I know I'm exaggerating, but it's so hot and it's only 7:42 a.m. Like, I don't understand. Like, it is so humid outside. And today I went to the gym at 5 a.m., which means like I was at the gym at 5, which means I left my house at like 4:30ish and I like immediately started sweating as soon as I walked outside. That's how hot it is. It is disgusting. If you are noticing that like there may be some background noise or something, it is because I'm currently in my bedroom instead of in my office because my office does not have air conditioning and it is way too hot even though it is only 7:42 in the morning. It is way too hot to be recording in my office. I can't. There's no way. It's way too hot. Like, I just took a shower and I'm already sweating and it's disgusting. But anyways, let's get into today's episode. We are going to be talking about feelings. So first, let's talk about what feelings are. And honestly, before I get into that, I want to talk about this like whole like team no feelings thing. Like, there's so many people that are like, oh, like team no feelings. And usually what that means is you don't want to become like emotionally attached to someone in like a romantic sense. Like, oh, I don't really want to like have feelings for this person. But I have a lot of thoughts about that. But so this is where I often hear that come up, or people are like, oh, I just like don't really have feelings, like things happen and I'm just kind of like indifferent about it. And what I want to say to that is that every single person, regardless of how you handle or deal with emotions, you have emotions, you have feelings. Like, it is not a thing to not have feelings. Actually, it is. I take that back. So there is this like, I believe it's considered a disorder, not positive. And honestly, the name is like super long, so I'm not even going to go into that. But you can look it up. If you don't have feelings, like there's something like literally wrong with you, like there's like I don't know if it's like a psychiatric condition or something like that. Like, there's literally something wrong with you. We are born feeling feelings. And what I always tell my clients is that, so I do get a lot of clients that try to tell me that they don't have negative feelings. And if you can feel positive feelings, then you have feelings, right? Like, a lot of the people that will say like, oh, I just don't have feelings. What they mean is that like, oh, I don't feel sad or I don't get upset or whatever. But then they're also like laughing and joking and like they're feeling like excitement and happiness and, you know, all these other like positive emotions. Like, if you can feel the positive emotions, you can also feel the negative ones. You're just not allowing yourself to feel those, right? So if you've ever experienced an emotion, you are able, like, you have feelings. So Just want to start that out. Every human on this earth has feelings unless they have some type of psychiatric condition where they don't have them. And in that condition, like you literally feel no feelings. It's not just like, oh, I don't feel the negative ones. It's like I feel zero of them. So anyway, what are feelings? Feelings are literally visceral reactions in our body. So we see something happen, we have like a thought about it, and something starts happening in our body. We start, oftentimes for me, it's like in my stomach, like I get like a, depending on the feeling, right? Like I get kind of like a turning in my stomach, or it feels light, or it feels heavy. Sometimes I feel hot or cold, or sometimes I might start getting like really sweaty. My heart might start beating like really fast, or feel like it's like coming up through my throat, right? I have this like bodily, visceral reaction after having a thought. And that visceral reaction, like that combination, because a lot of things are going on at once, that is a feeling. Like the label that we give that combination of feelings is a feeling. So for example, if I think like, oh, this person cut me off, and that I might feel like my heart racing, I might feel really sweaty, the temperature in my body might be going up, right? Usually, like there's like a knot in my stomach and it's like pushing upwards. And so that combination of feelings, I would consider anger, right? And so we have a combination of feelings in our body, and then we label that. But because we've experienced emotions for so long, we are readily able to identify the feeling that we're having without really paying attention to the physical reaction that's going on in our body. And so the work that I do with my clients is really working with them to identify when they tell me, hey, I'm feeling anxious, or I'm feeling like shame, or whatever the feeling is, like what is going on in your body? Because it's super important to always recognize what's going on in your body as well. So I say all that to say that feelings or emotions, you can call them either or, are just visceral reactions in your body. It's literally shit that's going on in your body. And then because we're humans and we use language, we've labeled those things as such, right? Just like we've labeled people in a sense, right? Like we've given them names just so we can like categorize things, right? It makes it easier for the brain. So it's the same thing, right? We have this combination of physical sensations in our body that we've then labeled as happiness or excitement or sadness or shame or, whatever. Doesn't matter. And that's another thing, is that feelings, oftentimes people will say like, oh, well, I feel like this person doesn't like me, or I feel like he doesn't help me around the house, or whatever it is. Those are not feelings. Those are thoughts that you have. You think that person doesn't like you. You think that your partner or whoever you're talking about doesn't help you around the house. Those are not feelings. Feelings are things such as happiness, sadness, anxiety, anger, shame, right? Those are feelings. Emotions, feelings, right? That's what those are. So why are there people that think that they don't have feelings when all humans have feelings? Well, I don't think that it's super common knowledge that all humans have feelings. And I think it also goes back to like this misconception that like, oh, well, I can be happy and excited and all those things. I just don't really feel negative emotions. And typically for people that think that they don't feel negative emotions, but they feel positive ones, it is because when they are feeling negative emotions, they're utilizing coping mechanisms to where like they're not necessarily feeling those emotions or processing those emotions. They're almost like turning a blind eye to it, right? Like it's like, oh, it's just not happening. I'm just not sad, when in actuality they are, right? So it could be sad, it could be mad, it could be, any other emotion that you would deem a negative emotion. Oftentimes people have begun utilizing like these coping mechanisms to kind of pretend that they're not there, and they really are. But they've become so acostumbrada to kind of like ignoring those emotions that it's like second nature, and they don't even realize that they're doing it at times. So this can be something that they started doing because they kind of had to. So this happens a lot in individuals that have lived very traumatic lives, or even just have had like a single trauma in their life, right? This is super common with individuals that have had some type of trauma where they're like, they almost had to not feel the negative emotion in order to survive. And then it just became like this thing that they were used to doing, like very unconsciously so, right? Like our brain is always looking out for us in the best way possible. Sometimes it doesn't do the best job, but it's really trying to look out for us. And so, if it was like, hey, like if we are really sad right now, like we don't have time for that shit. Like we got to keep going. Like, we're in survival mode. And so this happens a lot with individuals, again, that have had trauma. So this can be things such as like immigration. This could be things such as like assault, like so many things. There's a plethora of reasons of why people may begin to ignore their emotions. And it just becomes very second nature to the individual after, doing it again and again, and your brain being like, see, we didn't die, we're still surviving, so I'm going to hold on to this, right? Like you just keep doing it. And then oftentimes what happens is when individuals have this kind of coping mechanism where they've just kind of ignored these negative emotions, they can then pass that on to their children because they, again, this is very unconscious. They are not realizing that they're doing that. And so they then like pass it on to their kids, right? And so they're just like modeling it for them, almost like teaching it to them, right? And it goes unnoticed, and it can go unnoticed for years. And so these are just a few examples of why people might think that they don't have feelings. Another prominent example, especially in Latino households, is that oftentimes we are not allowed to feel our feelings. And I think this is going to be a topic for a whole other episode, but it is super common for parents to tell children like, oh, no pasa nada, right? And I think a lot of times it is meant as it's well-intentioned, right? Like if a kid hurts themselves and they're crying and they're like, oh, no pasa nada, like you don't want to see your kid cry. Understandable. However, it does hurt, and you're telling them that it doesn't. And so what happens is the child learns to stifle that emotion, and then it just becomes second nature. They become acostumbrados to not allowing themselves to feel these negative emotions. They are also not allowed to demonstrate these emotions, right? So like I might be feeling sadness, but I can't show that. I can't cry. I can't say anything because then I will get in trouble, right? And so they see it as something that is not okay to do. And so it just becomes very second nature. And this is oftentimes passed on to children, and it just keeps going on and on and on. So this is, again, these are only a few reasons of why people might think that they don't have feelings, but you do. You really do. And oftentimes we judge ourselves for having feelings, even positive feelings, which again, I think is a whole other episode, but we oftentimes judge ourselves for having negative feelings. And a lot of it comes from this upbringing that we had of like, we weren't allowed to show emotion. We weren't allowed to be sad because our parents sacrificed so much. And so like, we should just be happy. And like that life doesn't work that way. Like The life experience is 50-50. 50% of the time, you're going to feel happy or some type of positive emotion. And the other 50% of the time, you're just not going to feel that good. And there doesn't have to be a reason for it. You just don't feel good that day. You feel sad or you feel irritated that day or whatever it is. It doesn't matter. But that's the human experience, right? It's half and half. And the thing is that a lot of times we expect to be happy all the time. We see this in the media all the time, right? Like, we're not supposed to be sad. Like, there's like this, I don't even know what you would call it, but it's like a goal that we have to never be sad and be as happy as we can be. And that just doesn't make any sense, because regardless of what happens, we could have the best fucking life and we could still be sad sometimes or still be upset sometimes, right? Even the most richest people, even the people in the best relationships are sometimes sad, are sometimes mad, are sometimes angry, whatever it is, whatever feeling that you're trying to not feel. There's no place that we're going to get to where we're happy 100% of the time. And honestly, you don't want to be 100% of the time, happy 100% of the time. And here's why. It's because if you were happy 100% of the time, it would get old, right? If you were just always happy. The reason why happiness and excitement and these other love, these other positive emotions, pleasure, why they feel so good is because you experience the contrast. You experience sadness, irritability, anger, anxiety, right? It's because you have something to compare it to, right? It means nothing if that's just what it is. It's just like, oh, this is normal, right? But when you have something to compare it to, it's like, oh, this is amazing. I love this, right? And so you don't want to be happy 100% of the time. And also, negative emotions save you. Like when you feel fear or anxiety, when, I don't know, crossing a street, you're being cautious, right? You want to have those. You don't want to just walk out into the street because you don't have this cautious feeling about you, right? That something may hit you. That is how we've survived, decades, is by having these negative emotions. So going back to the original point is that we judge ourselves because we are not allowed to have these emotions, and they're just normal. So I invite you to just recognize that you're just having the human experience. My partner always asks me, ¿por qué no puedes ser una niña normal? Right? When I'm upset or something. But I'm that is the most normal thing that you can do, is to have emotions. And honestly, emotions that don't even make sense. The other day, I was crying because I don't even know why I was crying. I gave myself a reason why I was crying. I told him it was because we have a different idea of when we started dating, según our anniversary, which it doesn't fucking matter. Who cares, right? That was the reason I gave myself, because he asked me why. And I was honestly, I don't know. I just started crying out of nowhere. And to me, that is being a niña normal, as he calls it, right? That is so fucking normal. And so when you find yourself judging yourself for having these emotions, even if you can't name them, just be oh, soy normal. Use that as a realization that you're normal, that's the most normal thing that you could do for yourself. So why are emotions so important to learn about, and what the hell does this have to do with sex and with pleasure, which is the basis of this podcast? Well, everything that we do and do not do comes from what we are feeling, regardless if we know what we are feeling or not. So I want you to think for a second how you act when you are happy versus how you act when you're angry in kind of like a similar situation. Like we hear it all the time, like wrong bitch, wrong day type of thing. Like that is what, in essence, we are talking about. We just don't realize it. Any action that we take or any inaction, any action that we don't take comes from emotion, right? So how does this work? The example that I always give is anger, right? Because it's not that we don't want to feel negative emotions, because again, those are super important and they will always be there regardless. But it is about processing those emotions. So the example that I always use is anger. And the scenario that I always use is that if your man cheated on you, so whether he told you or you found out, whatever, and you were angry, you might, from unprocessed anger, right? You haven't processed the anger yet. You might key his car. You might go and stalk the chick that he cheated on you with, right? You might damage his property. You might throw his shit out the door, right? Whatever it is. You might hit him. I don't know, right? Just basically all those examples that we think of in like the movies and stuff, right? So that is unprocessed anger. This even happens in like the court of law when we're thinking about like, oh, it was a crime of passion, right? They were acting from unprocessed emotions versus processed emotions. Processed emotions, on the other hand, are emotions or actions that we take from this like very conscious state. So if we have processed the emotion already, maybe we were angry and we processed it and we still decide, you know what, I want to be angry about this. But it comes from a more level-headed decision. So it's a more conscious decision. So if your partner was like, hey, I cheated on you, or you found out that he cheated on you, whatever it is, and you processed the anger and you decided you still want to be angry about it, what might you do differently? You might make a plan to leave, like if it isn't currently feasible. You might go stay at a friend's house or stay at a family member's house, right? You might go looking for apartments. You might create a plan to leave because it's not maybe safe right now, right? But creating a plan, making sure you have support in place, right? There are so many things that you would do differently from that processed anger versus the unprocessed anger. So this is why it is so important to talk about emotions in any context, but specifically when it comes to pleasure and to sex, because if we feel that we're out of control with our emotions, we are going to be acting in a way that we don't necessarily want. It's almost like I can't control my actions and I don't know why, but it's because you are not in control of your emotions, and you truly are in control of your emotions. You get to decide how you want to feel about any given situation. Hey mujer, this is your invitation to join La Sinvergüenza Symposium. Redefine what it means to be a sinvergüenza and learn to do the things you enjoy without shitting on yourself. The waitlist is open and ready for your name. The link to join is in the show notes. If you like what you heard, be sure to hit the subscribe button to be notified when new episodes are released. Join me every week to hear me talk about orgasms, foreskin, dildos, and all the other cochinadas your abuela didn't tell you about. But that's not all. We'll also discuss machismo, la tía metiche, and sexual stories from other Latinas just like you. And if you're ready to start spicing up your sex life tonight, then be sure to download my free ebook, Spice It Up con la Sex Coach. You can find the link in the show notes. And finally, let's keep in touch. You can find me on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok at Sex and Spanglish. Be sure to follow me and let me know you heard this episode. Deseándote todo el placer, porque el placer es poder.